So what do we mean when we refer to resource leveling? Well, it's not this type of leveling. Instead, it refers to activity start and finish dates being adjusted based on resource constraints. In other words, it might be technically possible for us to move forward on several tasks at the same time, but if we can't apply the same resources to all of those tasks simultaneously, then in reality, it's not actually possible for this work to get done. So resource leveling really helps us to balance project needs with our supply of resources. Now, often when we take resource leveling into account, we see an increased critical path length as one of the results. But again, we see this because it better reflects the reality of the project environment, not because we're actually being delayed in any sort of manner. Rather, because only certain resources are available to us and they can't work on the same activities all simultaneously, this is a better reflection of how quickly and how efficiently we can get our work done, rather than making estimates that we simply won't be able to live up to. In turn, by creating these sort of expanded timelines where we better take into account the resources we do have available to us, we may later be able to provide some schedule compression in these areas by perhaps having our resources work a bit of overtime in order to help make up some of the expansion of time that we might see versus what might be theoretically possible with unlimited resources. Let's take a look at an example. Here we see a number of different activities that must take place for a project. Now, if you look over to the right side, you'll see a very easy, simple kind of visualization of a critical path flow here, where activities A, B, and D may all begin without any prerequisites, C may only begin after A and B are complete, and E may begin only after C and D are complete. Now, again, if we have unlimited resources, then perhaps we would have a system somewhat like this, where on the first day of the project, we can accomplish all A, B, and D activities. On day 2, we can finish up activity C, because we can't begin work on that until A and B have been accomplished. And then on day 3, we could see to all of the different activity E resources. However, we only have 2 people who can work on this project who are able to get these tasks done, as you can see by our icons down here at the right. So if we begin to apply them to our different activities here, we see that it's impossible to accomplish all of what we possibly could on day 1 with only these 2 resources available. So instead, we need to go ahead and spread this schedule out to account for when project work can actually be completed, not just based on dependencies between activities, but also based on the resources we have. If we spread it out to look a little more like this, then what we'll see is first we can sort our activities, in this case very easily by alphabetical order, since they happen to break down pretty nicely that way. And then we can begin to recompile these into a way that optimizes our workflow based on the resources available to us. So we move from having A, B, C, D, and E here to then realizing that activity B could be accomplished by the same resources as A on the second day of the project. After that, activity C and D could be completed on day 3. Now, these can be accomplished concurrently because they don't share any dependencies. Activity C only requires one of our resources to work on it, and activity D can be seen to without any dependencies whatsoever. Now, of course, we can only begin work on activity C at this point because A and B are already complete. And we've waited to do work on activity D until now because we've leveled our resources and we want to maximize the work they can get done. Now, we could have tackled, for example, B1 and D1 on the same day, but until activity B2 was completed, work on activity C would not be able to begin. So it makes more sense to go from activities A to both of the B activities and then on to activities C and D on the same day. Moving forward, once again, we can apply the same 2 resources to activity E, now that C and D are both completed. And then we do have that one remaining activity that simply can't be seen to until the 5th day of project work due to our resource limits. Now, the optimal schedule may have been 3 days based purely on dependencies between activities, but our most realistic time frame, given the resources available to us, would be 5 days. Once again, we might have an opportunity here where we could go ahead and apply some extra resources or some extra time to that final activity, E3. Maybe we can rally the team to work a little bit of overtime that day or split that task between a couple resources in order to complete it more quickly. In that case, perhaps we could wrap up project work in just 4 days. But this is an area where we might want to use some schedule compression techniques and isn't something that we would take care of while doing resource leveling alone. Here, we just want to get the best idea of what is the most possible, realistic, and optimal schedule given the resources we have available.